What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy Royale YouTube channel. Me and Anthony are back with our This or That series that we've been doing for the channel. If you missed the Bryce Young or CJ Stroud video or the Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison video, go check it out after this video and let us know what you think in the comments. Who was right? Who was wrong? Anthony, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, man. Can't wait to do another one. Looking forward to it.
This one's a fun one. This one's gonna be this one's a harder one, and this one's an interesting one. We're going back to wide receivers, but going a little younger in this class, 24. And we're doing a this or that on Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Which guy are you guys going to take in this draft? And I think this is interesting because you're looking at a prospect in Emeka who came in as the wide receiver one, more highly touted, a 5-star recruit. When Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't come out as touted, he was touted, but not as touted as him. And now, based on a game, we've seen Marvin Harrison kind of jump up in value. So if we look at the ADPs right now, Marvin Harrison Jr. is getting drafted as wide receiver 7, generally around that area at 208, round 208 and 204, somewhere in there. Emeka is getting drafted as wide receiver 12 and going basically around later. Now, to put in perspective of where Marvin Harrison Jr. is getting drafted, here are the guys that are getting drafted either around him or after him. Brock Bowers, tight end from Georgia. Quinn Ewers from Texas, depending on where he falls in the draft. Josh Downs from North Carolina. Will Shipley from Clemson. Sean Tucker and Braylon Allen and Michael Mayer are actually all going after Marvin Harrison Jr. So if you're drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., you're essentially drafting him based on ceiling. You're like, hey, I think he can be that next guy for Ohio State. Emeka's going to around later. So when we look at Emeka, where he's kind of going around, he's going around guys like Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, who I think is 30 next year. Evan Stewart from Texas A&M, Parker Washington from Penn State, Raheem Sanders from Arkansas, running back, and then Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. So definitely a different in who they're going around, right, Anthony?
Yeah, so the value proposition of who they're going around shifts pretty dramatically just a round apart. I think the guys going around Marvin Harrison Jr. are clearly kind of in a different tier than the players getting selected near Emeka in the 3rd round.
And you got to understand tiers when you look at Devy value, because if it's not CTC, you don't care about production. Like, I don't really care about college production. So you're looking at the tiers and you're saying, okay, so essentially you're drafting Marvin Harrison in the tier that you expect him to get 1st or 2nd round draft capital. Because when I'm looking in the 2nd round, mid-2nd round, you're looking at those guys being top 24 guys. You better hit on those guys. You can't miss in your 1st and 2nd round picks.
Yeah, you kind of need a sure thing, like somebody that you feel good about the NFL falling in love with, spending that kind of premier draft capital on and finding their way to playing time sooner rather than later when they make it to the pros.
Yeah. And so I think that's the biggest thing. All right, where are we going with this? So just keep that in mind as we talk about these guys of where their value is at. Now, production rise, there's really not a ton to talk about with both of them. They basically both played 4 games last year. We didn't see them a ton. They can't spot up duty. Emeka did a little bit kickoff return duty as well. 11 receptions for Harrison, 139 yards. He had 3 touchdowns in the Utah game. I think that's what everybody's kind of projecting on in that Rose Bowl game where he came off. Emeka had 9 receptions, 191 yards, and no touchdowns. Both seem to be kind of in that area where they're projected to be that number 2 with Jackson Smith-Njigba, and then who's going to take that next step. What is your opinion? Because I don't think we've ever discussed these guys. What is your opinion of these guys? Where do you have them at right now, just in general, of like as you're thinking about it?
It's really interesting because it's so much projection for both of them. Like both, fairly highly touted recruits. Emeka more so than Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s got the strong bloodlines, which are overplayed sometimes, but
I don't know about this one. I think this one might not be as overplayed.
I think this one matters. I think this one matters a little bit. Look, it's tough because I could tell you between these 2 players, I think it's mostly going to come down to like a strict value proposition for me. Because I think right now I do have Marvin Harrison Jr. slightly higher than Emeka. I have them both as top 12 guys for Devy. But it's going to be interesting to see who can kind of take hold of that 2nd wide receiver spot early on in the season across from JSN. Because we know it'll be all JSN for 2022 for this season. We'll see what happens after that. But these guys are going to have to stake their claim to who's going to be, the 2nd most prolific in this kind of high-powered Buckeyes passing attack.
Well, we know it won't be Julian Fleming, right?
It will not be Julian Fleming. No, Watch it be Julian Fleming.
Oh,
Someone's
yeah,
gonna clip this video.
well, no, they won't, because I'll be deleting it. All right, so we have, so we have Marvin Harrison there, and then we have Emeka going to be there. I think the question mark too. I think one other area to look at the depth chart is like where. So JSN is probably going to play in a slot, I would assume. Like I think he's going to be there. Emeka's pretty much the slot guy too, right? Like
Mhm.
I think they will run the 4 wide receiver set. Like they're going to do some things where they're going to get on the field there. I think Marvin Harrison has a chance to kind of outproduce him just like based on snaps. I think he's going to get.
Yeah.
I think he might see a little bit more snaps in that case because I think he fits a need for them a little bit more. But like you said, I mean, Marvin Harrison was the 14th ranked wide receiver coming in, 4-star guy. Emeka was the 5-star, and he was the #1 recruit. So, like, as far as recruiting pedigree, that does matter. Like, there's part of that. If we watch, and we're gonna look here at Marvin. He's a big guy. I think that when I look at him and watch him play, I think he's 6'3". I think almost 200 pounds. I believe he's listed there. I think he got bigger as he goes. They're both learning from Brian Hartline, who's the best wide receiver coach in the country, if not the best, probably offensive guy in the country. He's got big hands. I think that, he's great at route running, which should bode well from his father, right? We talk about that. I mean, that was one of his mainstays there. I enjoy watching Marvin play. I just haven't seen him enough, right? I think he's more of a red zone threat. I think they're going to be able to use him in the red zone. We saw those 3 touchdowns there, but we got to see more reps.
I agree. He's a really good route runner, and like you said, you'd expect that from a Hall of Fame father to kind of show him the ropes
Yeah.
there. But the one thing that's really interesting to me about him, like from a size perspective, because like you said, I think he was listed at like 6'3", 190 or 195, something like that. I can't wait to see what this guy like weighs in at NFL Combine time ahead of his draft class, because I wonder if he's going to be somebody that, as he continues to kind of fill out, weighs 210, 215, something like that, or if he kind of keeps this kind of slender frame a little bit where he's got the height but weighs in sub 200 pounds. He looks like he could still put on like another 10 pounds of muscle and not really lose anything. But I agree with what you said also about him kind of profiling more as an outside guy, where Emeka wants to live in the slot a little bit. They have JSN, and we talked about playing in the slot in the Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston video. JSN's a little bit different. Like, I don't think JSN has to play in the slot. I think they play him in the slot because he's so good at it.
Yeah.
Where he's somebody that I think can move all over the formation at the next level. So if Ohio State wants to get creative with him, I think they can, but it'll be interesting to see how that really kind of directly impacts or correlates to where they play Emeka.
No, I like that you brought up the weight thing, because they talked about him maybe wanting to get to 220. Like in the offseason, they were saying, like, could you imagine him at 220 plus all his route techniques and the speed and the something that he got?
If this guy's 6'3", 215, 220 by the time that's a big man with incredible routes to go with it. So that'll be I'm interested to see what he looks like or checks in at once it's time for him to head to the league.
And I just want to point out this route because I love it so much. He just makes this guy look silly and
absolutely cooks him.
And the thing about him too, and I know that they were playing backups and those type of things. They talked about him having really good ball tracking ability, and you saw that. You see these flashes of him being able to catch it over his shoulder, tracking the ball really well, good catch radius because he's a big guy, good size. I like that about him. I think that's why he's getting drafted in the second round, like we just showed you. Like when you add all these things, I don't think he's reached his potential yet. Like his ceiling is not close to it. And all the things out of camp at Ohio State is, hey, this kid is special. Like we've seen some things, and there's a reason why he got on the field, like as a true freshman. I mean, there was things that they saw in camp that say, hey, we got to get this guy out there. But I don't want to do Emeka wrong. Emeka's still good. Like Emeka's
very good.
He's my wide receiver 4 of that class, and Harrison's my 2 of the 24 class. So we're nitpicking here, but I will say Emeka did play a role in special teams. You'll see that here. I mean, he does have athleticism. So when you're watching him play, I think he's got a very good body control when he plays well when he's out there. Good size and strength. When you watched him in high school, I thought he did very good at creating distance on deep routes. And I still think that he has above average athleticism. And I do think he has yak ability. Like someone comped him to like a young Juju, not an old Juju, not Juju that we know now, but like a young Juju in college at USC. And I thought that was a pretty fair comp.
I saw that same Juju comp, and I actually kind of love it. And that's not a slight against Emeka either. Like I loved Juju coming out, and I think he's got a lot of that same toughness and the one thing I would really want to point out that you highlighted is what he can offer in terms of yards after catch. Like, I think this is a guy that can, live in the mud, like live in the tough, like middle area of the field and consistently move the chains for you. I think he could do more than that, but I think he's a tough guy that can win with physicality, yak, and body control across the middle of the field. He's probably been a little slighted and done a little dirty over the last few months as we've all fallen in love with Marvin Harrison Jr. But like you said, for the 2024 class, these guys are not that far apart. We are nitpicking. I'm kind of locked in with you, where I have Marvin Harrison number 2 and Emeka number 4 right now in 2024.
Yeah, and the 2024 class, just to be aware, we did an episode on this, me and Christian. Like, there's so much unknowns after Xavier Worthy that you really just, there are so many unknowns. Harrison, Ja'Cory Brooks, Emeka, Mario Williams, Franklin, Bo Collins. Like, no one really popped off of this class besides Worthy. We saw Worthy pop off.
Yeah.
So Marvin Harrison Jr. is sitting there. And so I think that's where you get that upside. That's where you see him getting taken in the second round, because we see this in Devy. You got to go after those wide receivers and you got to really go grab them. But Jackson Smith was that guy last year, and look what he did. Now he's the wide receiver 1 of the 23 class, what everybody says.
Yeah, very true.
All right, well, the question, this is a tough one. Who are you going with? So who are you picking?
All right, so this one is the hardest one of the 3 that we've done to date, including this one. For the record, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. as my wide receiver 7 in Devy. I have Emeka wide receiver 12. That being said, I'm going to take Emeka at a full round discount over Marvin Harrison, just for the fact that, maybe we see Marvin Harrison be the guy behind JSN this year, and Emeka doesn't have quite as big a role, but there's still more football to be played after that. I think Emeka can still do enough in 2020, in this season, and in 2023 to keep that draft stock where it needs to be. That I like the idea of getting somebody like a Will Shipley round 2 and then circling back with Emeka in round 3. So the gap in value between them being so much more sizable than it was between, say, Quentin Johnson and Jordan Addison when we talk those guys, makes it appealing to take the discount on Emeka in this situation for me.
All right, we're going to disagree on this one. So
hey, we did it. Finally.
We're going to disagree. I'm going to say with a caveat, I'm going to kind of cheat. If Braylon Allen's still on the board, I'm not taking him. I'm not taking Marvin Harrison Jr. But let's say he's off the board. If Marvin Harrison's sitting there, I think that just based on, I think there is a tier. And like you said, I think the question is, like, I'm a risk taker when it comes to Devy 2 with wide receivers. Like, if I can grab someone like I did with Jackson Smith-Njigba last year, Marvin Harrison Jr. still, I think, could be a value if he's going around that 208 range, because if he does pop off this year, he's going to be a first-round value pick next year, right? So, I can flip it if I wanted to. I could take that asset. I'm known in Devy leagues to flip a lot of assets because when they increase value, you have to be active, and I like to turn rosters. So I'm okay taking Marvin where he's at. Emeka, I think my concern with Emeka, even though I like him, and I've been a Emeka supporter forever, I think his ceiling is capped in terms of, like, he's probably Juju, which means he's a wide receiver 2. Like, if I'm looking at it from a fantasy perspective, like, he's probably a wide receiver 2 capped maybe kind of player, whereas Marvin could be a wide receiver 1. Like we talked about with him getting his weight on, his size, his speed, his dad. I like the blood stuff. Like, I think that's real. Like, I'll jump on that train all day. Like, Chad Johnson's son plays for Arizona State. Don't think I haven't been drafted him in the 45th round of C2C draft. Like, I will take that to the grave there. I think that it matters. So I think Harrison being in that range, like, I'll take the shot on Harrison and I'll take the value hit a little bit. And I'll just pretend like I'm a better Devy draft than my other league mates and take someone good in the 3rd. Like, I think that's how I'm going to roll with this one.
Hey, that's how you got to play the game sometimes. You could say there's a real possibility, though. Like, we should put it out there that you take, like you said, Marvin Harrison Jr. round 2 this year, and you're feeling like, the best in your league or the smartest guy in the room when he's going easily in the first round next year if it all goes according to plan. So we could be looking back at it a year later, and Emeka might have been a value this year, and it could be a situation where a year from now these guys were both good values in drafts. So
they're Ohio State wide receivers. They
probably
are.
Can't go wrong more often than not.
They probably are, unfortunately, going to be very good values because they're going to produce. And you're going to see improvement. And the one thing I will say too is, like, Ohio State's going to blow a lot of the teams out because they're the big the Big Ten's not good. So, when they're playing Northwestern and beating them by 60, Emeka's probably going to get a little bit more run than Marvin based on probably where he's at based on the depth chart. So we're going to see them produce and get better, and he's going to get reps. So you're right. Like, it wouldn't shock me to see like Marvin Harrison being a first-round pick next year and Emeka being a second-round pick next year. So I think there is good value there. Just give me the upside with Marvin. And plus, I needed to disagree with you at some point on one of these. So
we had to, find something to
we can mark it down. Mark it down the book.
We did it.
We did it. We appreciate it. So, hey, in the comments below, what do you think? Would you take Marvin in the second round, or would you take Emeka in the third? Where do you feel like there's a better value there? If you like it, subscribe. Let us know what you think. Sign up for our Patreon, and we appreciate that. Just $3 a month. Until next time, though, we'll see you guys later.